We've got Andy Reid at 1 and Alex Smith at 4:15.
4:30. 4:30. Alex Smith. Andy Reid at 1.
We'd like to start it out.
Mike, I would assume you've talked to the league about the officiating error at the end of the game, and they put out a statement today. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I talked to Dean earlier today. He gave me a call and just went over the scenario. Obviously, they made a mistake, and you live with it.
You updated us on London and D. Hall and Jordan Reed, I guess, too.
Yeah, Jordan will go through the protocol with a concussion, day by day. Same thing with Reed. No change there. Well, Jordan Reed and Reed Dougherty. And London's ankle, sprain. I'll let you know more on Wednesday exactly, how serious that is. Yeah, his hip is sore. I really don't know right now. He's getting treatment on it. Again, I'll update you more on Wednesday.
With Reed, because this is Reed Dowdy, because this is his second concussion this season, do you guys treat that any differently?
No different. Same as your first concussion.
Mike, I don't know if you're aware, there's a laser, a New York inventor has a laser technology he's talked to the league about that projects from the markers across the field, so there would not be that kind of spotting or down a distance controversy. Would you be in favor of something like that to avoid something?
Yeah, I think you talk about it at the owners' meeting, kind of go through the variables, exactly how accurate it is and how it would be implemented. I think there's a lot of technology that you could possibly use, but before you do that, you'll go through all the situations to find out if it's effective and how effective.
Mike, you sort of alluded to this last night, how difficult it is when you're limited from the playoffs. Your whole aim is to sort of play towards whatever shot you have left at the playoffs. Now that you're officially out, what changes in terms of your approach, especially maybe with playing young players, which you said last week you wouldn't do that just for the sake of doing it?
No difference. Obviously, you're disappointed because your goal is to get to the playoffs. And we all know if you get to the playoffs, you've got an opportunity to win and win a Super Bowl. So that's your first goal. But if you are eliminated, you still want to go out and play some good football. You'd sure like to win games. Everybody is very competitive, very motivated, and people that aren't motivated, even though they're out of it, usually don't last.
Mike, even with the officiating error, which obviously needs to be addressed by the league and so forth, you had 3 drop passes on that final drive. Pierre does get the first down before the ball is taken away. That error aside, you still had the chances you wanted to make. If Fred catches the ball, then the error works in your favor, correct? I mean, it's...
Yeah, we had a few opportunities there in that final drive. Even the one with Pierre. Pierre is the strongest guy on our team, and nobody really rips the ball out of his hands, and so that was quite unusual. And if you take a look at the end zone copy, one of the defensive backs has his hands on his face mask bringing it down, and that was probably the only reason why the DB did get away from Pierre, because I haven't seen anybody do that to him thus far.
Coach, you talked about this yesterday, but I'm curious to get your thoughts now that you've been able to go back and rewatch it. Alfred had 3 carries in the first, second plays of the second half, and then didn't touch the ball in the last 10 or so minutes of the third quarter and the final quarter. When you rewatched, what did you see from not being able to involve him?
Well, when you take a look at the first 3 plays, I think he had 11 yards, 4 yards, and 6 yards, and that 6-yard play was called back because of a penalty. Then in the second series, we had an option where Alfred either takes it or Robert keeps it, depending on what the option is, or he pitches it. And in that game, their game plan was to take Alfred away. So those option plays, Robert got the majority of those, and sometimes a wide receiver would get a pitch. And then I think on the third series, we had a pitch out to Lou to use his speed, use his quickness. And a couple reasons is I thought that field was a little bit slick for us. Alfred's footing wasn't that good. He went down on a number of plays. So that was a couple of the reasons that we probably didn't go as much to him as we normally would. And then I think the rest is history. Anytime you have 5 penalties or 3 penalties on offense and you have 5 sacks, you get put in some down and distance situations that's not real favorable to run a football.
There were several times, I think, when there were like read options where Griffin would keep, and it was probably the right decision, which is understandable. But not just specific to this situation, but in a game when you've gone a long time without one of your best players touching the football, is there a point where you say, hey, maybe we just go under center and give him a carry, and you almost call a play for the player, not the play? Do you ever do that?
Sure you do. That's why we had, 3 carries in the first series. We had, I think, 10 plays, and we had a couple penalties in that series. We had 30 yards. And like I said, the second one, we got the ball on the 10-yard line, and we had a chance to get the ball in the end zone. Then on the third series, we decided to go with a loop because we wanted to get the ball outside. And I could go through all the series, but it really doesn't matter. But when you get behind the 8 ball, when you do have 5 sacks, you do have 3 offensive penalties, you get put in situations, especially against a front that's playing an 8-man front to take away the run, that you throw the football. And once you look at those defenses, you don't even think about trying to attempt a running play when it's got that type of down and distance if you want a chance to win.
Mike, what was your message to the guys just as they go down this stretch where you have 4 games left? They're out of it mathematically, but there's obviously things to play for still.
Well, just what we talked about a second ago, that you're very disappointed when you're out of the playoffs. You play to get into the playoffs, like we've been talking about from day one. But after it's over and you go out there and play, and the way you prepare, you're playing just as though you were in the playoffs. You want to spoil somebody else's year. You want to play at a high level. You're always being evaluated for the future, and that never changes.
What's your confidence level in their ability to keep fighting?
Oh, big. Yeah, I've got a lot of confidence in this football team that they'll keep fighting. If not, then they won't be with us in a year.
Mike, you talked about sorry about that. Go ahead, Zach. Mike, you talked about footing on the field, and that being one of the reasons that Alfred. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. What did you say?
You talked about footing on the field, one of the reasons that Alfred didn't carry it as much, and I'm just wondering.
No, it really had to do with his effectiveness. I said there's a number of situations where Alfred was tackled one-on-one in the field that you don't normally see, and he did slip a number of times, in that first half. And one of the reasons why we tried to go outside and put a Lou in there in that second half. But other than that, with the option, they played in the same field, and they went through the same scenario. I'm just saying sometimes you evaluate that in certain scenarios when you go to more of a passing game than you do a running game, besides their 8-man front.
I was just trying to get at, your quarterback had 12 carries, your running back had 11, and for whatever reason, how does it make sense for that to be when he had some success, Alfred, as you went back and you talked about 11, 6, 4, how does it sort of make sense that when it's all said and done, whatever the run-pass options are, one of the options isn't, let's give it to our really good running back, one of the top 4 or 5 in the league?
Well, you explain to me what an option means. When you run an option, what does it mean to you?
Give it to one person or give it to another person.
1, 2, or 3, right? It all depends who they take away. They decided to take away Alfred Morris, and normally they don't always do that. Sometimes they'll change it up. In this game, they took Alfred Morris away every time, so that's why he didn't get the carries he normally has on the option. And then I explained in the second half with some of our penalties that we had, some of our sacks, we got put behind the 8 ball in some long-yard situations, which leads you to throw the ball a little bit more.
But can you determine that in 11 carries? Really? I mean, can you determine that?
Well, you have to take a look at the front, too, what type of front you're going against. You got to look at the front. I know that doesn't mean anything to you,
yeah,
but it does to, people that try to run the football. And we have been fairly, we believe in the running game. I think you realize that. So for us not to run it, there's a reason why.
Like, to get back to what Mark asked you before about some of the younger guys, do you feel like through practice this year, through situations a lot of these guys have been in, maybe some of the offensive linemen, guys like Brandon Jenkins, you guys have a pretty good idea of what they're capable of doing if they're thrust into a game?
Yeah, you get a feel through preseason, and sometimes they got to earn the right during the season to get out there. So you're evaluating these guys all the time in the practice squad. It's part of the evaluation process.
Does anything change? Maybe do you guys get more practice reps at this point? Does any of that kind of breakdown change?
No, they're being evaluated every day like we talked about 2 weeks ago. Just because the guy's in a practice squad or because you're out of the playoff race doesn't mean somebody's going to be elevated just to see what he can do in the game. The best players are going to play, and they've got to earn the right, regardless if they're draft choices or veteran players.
Mike, you addressed this a little bit last night when you said you can't lose your poise, but when you have a string of penalties like you did last night with the 2 unsportsmanlike conduct and then Pierre the delay a game for kicking the ball, did you go back and address that at all today? Will you go back and address that issue during the week?
Yeah, I do address it. And, the one with D. Hall, I was pretty upset with D. Hall during the game because, he's a competitor. And he's done a great job, recently of trying to stay away from it. And then after I took a look at what the offensive lineman did to him, I could understand why he retaliated, even though you never want a guy to retaliate. And Santana Moss is another great competitor, and he's a guy that always keeps his cool. And when they called that holding penalty on him on that sideline, I could see why he was upset, because I agree with Santana. It should not have been called a holding penalty, but it was. And Santana, he knows that you really got to keep your cool in those situations or she'll draw a flag. And Pierre kicking that ball, even though it didn't cost us, number one, it was one of the best kicks I've ever seen. I've never seen a ball go that far. But on the serious side, he's one of the most fierce competitors I've been around. If I get everybody playing like him, you won't need coaches.
Mike, not to belabor the point, but back to Al for just 1 second. Does any of the, run game struggles the last 2 games specifically have anything to do with Darrell and Jordan Reed also not being there and the different things that you like to do?
That's a great question. Yeah, when you lose both your fullbacks, it's a little bit different. We went in the game with thinking Jordan was going to play. We weren't sure about Niles until the day before. And DY, we were hoping that there was a chance. So when you lose your fullbacks, it does put you in a little different type of one-dimensional game.
Mike, that track.
I like that football question. That was good. That's all right. That's all right. That's good.
Mike, that track on the outside that Robert slipped on, is that something new this year that's put in there? How concerned were you when you saw him go down on that?
Well, I didn't see it until today. That was a fall. That was probably the best hit of the whole day. And we got to do something because somebody can seriously get hurt right there. I have no idea. I've never been over there.
Mike, now that you had a day to go back and look at Robert's performance after some uneven passing performances, he completed 75% of his throws. What did you like about his game last night?
Well, I think what you do is you look at collectively. We don't go into a lot of detail, but the bottom line is we were hoping to be more effective than we were. We needed to score more points. We had a chance to put a lot more yards up there. So at the end of the day, we were disappointed that we weren't more effective than we were. And that's collectively as a group. So we don't talk about anybody individually. Obviously, when you start out the game 12 for 12 or whatever those numbers were, did a lot of good things. But at the end of the day, we got to put some more points on the scoreboard. Anytime you're 1 for 8 in the third down category in the second half, you have 5 sacks, regardless, if it's linemen, quarterback, receivers, whoever it may be. It's a collection of guys working together and being more effective. Anybody else?
Like back to Reed Dowdy for a second. I know, as you said, the protocol is not any different, but do you sense any more concern on his part? Do you have any more concern about it, given that the last one this season was very serious and now he has another one?
Yeah, I think you're always more concerned, after the first concussion. A guy has a second one, there is more concern. But I think the question was asked, is there any difference in the protocol, and it's the same.
To go back to the point about youth and guys earning their way in the practice squad, is there a scenario where you would put a young guy in for these final games, even if you felt maybe he didn't represent the absolute best chance to win that day, but might be good long-term to get those snaps?
Well, I think each situation is a little bit different. If 2 guys were very, very close, you may go in that direction. All depends on, the competition. Players know when you're playing for the future. Players know that, your job is to play the best players that give you the best chance to win. If you want to see a team turn on you, just go start playing younger players and start playing for the future.
Like 12 games in your opinion, what is the most disappointing part about this team right now, and what's the most encouraging thing about this team right now?
Well, it's always tough when you don't find ways to win. And, when you lose, games in the last maybe quarter, half, you got to find ways to finish games. And if you're able to do that, you can stay in the hunt. So in December, these games are meaningful. I think the positives is we've got some good guys. We've got some guys working extremely hard, and that gives you a chance to do good things.
Mike, you guys last year, I think, had 50, 55 plays of completions of over 20 starts. This year, half of that. And I'm just wondering, as you look at your system offensively, long term, obviously teams have made adjustments. But what do you think is the long-term sustainability of your offense? One that is so dependent on 10, 12, 15 play drives, passing game that really isn't pressing the ball.
Well, first of all, I think you have to go over the last 20 years and take a look at what we've done offensively for 20 years.
But this system's been in for 29 games.
Pardon me?
This system you have here.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts are the same system. Maybe the 50 series is a little bit different, but yeah, it is the same system probably over the last 20 years, with the exception of a few different wrinkles every year.
But in terms of the last 29 games with these players, this quarterback, this system, what do you think is the long-term sustainability of this offense where the numbers would say there isn't a consistency factor in pushing the ball down the field? And you're dependent on a lot of 15, 13, 12 play drives. What's the long-term sustainability?
Well, first of all, when you talk about the big plays, are you talking about this year or last year? Well, last year, we were the most effective, obviously, yards per play in the National Football League. So you can't get a whole lot better than number one when it talks to the run and the pass. So we were there. This year, we're not there. We're still moving the ball fairly well on the ground. We're not where we want to be in the passing game. We're working to improve that. And we've fallen short the last 2 or 3 games.
And to that point, obviously people have made adjustments. So as you go back now and look to make adjustments on the adjustments, what's the long-term sustainability of that? Can you make adjustments?
Well, I think what you have to do, like I said already, is you have to go back and take a look at what's been done over the last 20 years. Take a look at the offenses. Take a look at the quarterbacks. Take a look at the running game. Take a look at the passing game. And if you can take a look at every quarterback for over a 3 or 4 year time frame, it doesn't take you long to take a look at a philosophy that someone has both in the running game and the passing game and see how effective it is. But you'd have to take about 10 minutes time to go back through that and then come up with a solution.
Okay, I got a couple things. First, going back to the youth aspect, you said if a guy's close that you would consider playing him. Mm-hmm. Is there anybody that you haven't played? I guess specifically the young offensive linemen, because those are the only guys that you probably really haven't played. Are there any of those 3 that are close to somebody else in that group that you might consider them?
Yeah, I think there's a number of guys that are very close. But like I said, at the beginning, they're close. Are they there yet? If you're going to put a guy in that's close and you're not playing the best player, then what you've told your football team is you are evaluating these young guys, and you really don't care about the game. What you do is care about the future. And if you want to lose a football team, that's the first thing to do. Now, if that person warrants a chance to play because it's very, very close in competition, that's a different story.
Do you feel that anybody is that close to warranting that sort of move?
Yeah, even if I did, I wouldn't, share it with the media. It would happen during the week, and they'd have to prove themselves, during the week, and they get a chance on game day.
Logan Paulson last night was talking about kind of what Dave was talking about, the adjustments teams have made to you guys and how it's been hard to. He said, they're watching it in meetings, they're seeing what they need to do, they see it on tape, they see it on the blackboard, but they're not executing maybe the adjustments that are. Is that because either they're not, you guys are seeing a lot more different things that they're having a harder time reacting to it, or is it why do you feel that might be? Is it?
Well, it's really putting a good offense or good defense together. If you want to be a top 5 team in the National Football League, offensively, defensively, and special teams, that's what you have to do to win a Super Bowl. You got to be in that top 5 category, and then you usually have a good chance. Now, sometimes you may be in the top 10, but if you want to have a legitimate chance to not only be in the playoffs but do something once you get there, that's your goal. If it's the running game, passing game, if it's run defense, pass defense. And if you look at if you look at the Super Bowl teams over the last 30 years, you combine that in turnovers, and you'll see very quickly which teams are, the top teams in the National Football League.
So I guess, in other words, do you agree with him that you guys as an offense are having a hard time executing against their adjustments?
Oh no, that's what offense is. It's making adjustments. That's what you do. They can only do so many things. The thing that Giants did that I was a little disappointed in is they played pretty much a pretty base defense. And what you got to do is just out-execute people. And, we just couldn't, we didn't get it done like we'd like to, and disappointed we didn't put the points on the scoreboard like we should.
Mike, do you have any update on Maurice Hurt, and do you have to make that decision Wednesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Do you have any update
Yeah,
on
Tuesday.
Mike, some of the issues with the penalties, the unsportsmanlike, and the drop passes and so forth, and some of the intangibles like that. How much of that is just a product of frustration of a losing season, and is there a way to address that with the team?
And you can make excuses for anything, but the bottom line is you got to concentrate on your job on each play. And if one guy has a bad day, you all pay for it, or if two guys do. So, our job is to all hopefully execute, and if you do that, then you got a chance to do something. If you want to be one of the top teams in whatever category, you got to do it as a team.
Mike, Jordan Reed arrived here with his left knee, hip injury, quad, all that kind of stuff from Florida. Has had the hip injuries so far this year, has a concussion now. Are you at all concerned about his durability at this point? Are there things you guys can do to maybe make him healthier, safer?
Well, I can't answer that question in his first year. He's got a concussion right now. He's working through it. There's a protocol that he goes through, and hopefully he will be healthy because he's a very talented player, very tough player. But I can't tell you about somebody's injuries in the future. Don't know yet.
And, speaking of tight ends, Niles Paul, was he at the game yesterday? Do you have any update on him?
He was in work this morning. Yeah.
Mike,
he's feeling a little bit better. He's not totally out of it.
Mike, when you look at where you are in special teams right now and evaluate that, what's your frustration level right now? If it hasn't sort of been one thing, it's been another, seems like, throughout the season.
I'll be honest with you, I was really pleased with the special teams yesterday. I thought it was the best game we had. Then all of a sudden we have that snap that happens, and all of a sudden it really ruins the day for special teams. But a lot of good things going on. We've made drastic improvements in that area. I think you could see it, except for that botched snap.
You've talked about, and it makes a lot of sense, that Robert needs to play to continue to improve. As it pertains to an evaluation of Kirk, it's abnormal that you've got two second-year guys like that. Can you have a pretty accurate feel for what he is going into a pretty big offseason in terms of his value without seeing him in a game? Or does part of you want to see how he would handle playing?
I get a good feel of value because I get to see people practice every day. Now, if you're talking about outside people evaluating, obviously they don't know. But I do know.
Well, not necessarily outside people in terms of media, but other talent evaluators. I mean, they've got some preseason film. They don't have much else.
No, you're right. You're right. And like I said, that goes for all positions on the team.
But obviously, Robert has to play, so how do you kind of balance that if he's a guy who's you think's really good and may have value this offseason that other people may not know that?
Well, you don't balance unless somebody gets hurt, somebody goes down. And when they do, you have to take advantage of your opportunity. And that's why, when someone does go down, it's always the next man up type mentality. And that's when you got to take advantage of it. That's why you got to be so prepared. I think the hardest thing is for a second-year quarterback or the second-team quarterback to prepare and be ready for every game like he's a starter. Because it takes a lot of hours, a lot of mental preparation, and you don't get a chance to get in. But when you do get in, you got to take advantage of that opportunity. And when Kirk does, or when he has, like last year, if it was Cleveland or Baltimore, he took advantage of it and he proved to people that you can count on. Anything else? Okay, thanks.